Hello, everyone, and you're listening to the Triple T podcast, Tony's Tech Talks. My name is Tony Seminary, and I am based in the City of Roses, Portland, Oregon. During my day job, when I'm not doing podcast, I'm the founder and CEO of IT Motives. We're a technology recruiting company, and we help our clients with executive search, direct placement, and contract staffing, both on a retained and contingent basis. If you'd like to learn more about IT Motives, please visit our website at itmotives.com. And you can also listen to our podcast that we do at itmotives.com as well. The premise of Triple T, Tony's Tech Talks, is to really get to know people's stories out in the community. Talk to them about technology, kind of what's going on with technology, how they got into technology, the trends out there with technology, and things of that nature. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my next guest on Triple T. His name is Mark Bryant. Mark is the Vice President of Technology with DAT Solutions in Beaverton, Oregon. And if you didn't know, DAT stands for Dial a Truck. Mark, it is a pleasure. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here, Tony.
Yeah. Can you tell me more about your story, Mark? I always kind of call it the Reader's Digest version of your story. I'd love to know more about your journey and kind of how you got to this point in your professional career.
Sure. Let's see. So I'll start maybe towards the beginning, moving quickly towards probably the end is more of the interesting part. But I'm born and raised mostly in Washington, Southwest Washington, Vancouver area. Actually, in Ridgefield, Washington is where I went to high school. I ended up going to Clark College actually for a year right after I graduated high school, and while I was there, this was 2001. So while I was there, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that I was pretty good at math and like physics and stuff like that, and I still remember catching wind that you could make $60,000 a year as a software engineer right out of college. And it was like, I'd love to say I had some I grew up loving computers and like all that stuff, but no, I was like, okay, well that's good enough for me to take a direction. So I immediately signed up for any programming classes I could find at Clark College, and at the time it was Introduction to C. That was it. That was intro programming. It was Intro to C, and so I said, okay, well, cool, programming, right? Anyways, it was a very challenging course, as probably I don't think most people now start in C. Usually, most introductory programs are in something that's a garbage collected, strongly typed language like Java or something like that. But so I got definitely thrown in the deep end with a teacher who was, I wish I could remember his name because he was he was pretty well known for those of you that were the Clark College around those days, but he had no love lost for Java with him because it was all about type pointers and memory allocation and all that stuff. So that didn't deter me. So I decided, after just 1 year at Clark, I went to the University of Washington, ended up in the computer science program there, got my degree. After that, ended up working for Boeing, did an internship at Boeing, stayed at Boeing for a little while. That was a great experience. I worked both on their defense side and then on the commercial side for a little while. And from there, decided to get back to my roots. I had gotten married, decided, well, to get back to my roots. Oh, I'm sorry. I also worked after Boeing. I worked at Microsoft for a short stint. So I had a fairly typical Seattle resume built up at that point. But I had gotten married, decided to come back to my roots, so relocated down to the Vancouver, Washington, actually, and bought a house. And then actually, I did a short stint as working with my father-in-law as a kind of he does heavy construction, heavy road construction, as like a project manager, sort of in between jobs. I kind of was rethinking about what exactly I wanted to do with my career. Decided that wasn't necessarily for me. So then started looking again. I interviewed in quite a few places, I remember, but there was one that I really loved their pitch. I loved the culture that I saw. It was a company that I didn't know much of, this little sleepy company called DAT, or at the time felt sleepy to me anyways. And from there, I think my story sort of took off a bit as far as like career progression is concerned. I found quickly that, DAT was the kind of place that you could pick up problems, solve them, get noticed for that, get given more responsibility, be allowed. It was small enough, and I would say it still is relatively small enough to really have a big impact and be able to not have things sort of pushed down to you like, okay, here's your box of work, finish it, and give it back. But instead, here's a problem. We don't know exactly how to do it. And for me, I think the things that really marked my sort of progression to the place where I'm at now, I started at DAT as a senior engineer, where we decided we needed to put more focus in mobile, and I was like, great, that's something that I'm super interested in. So I spent a while getting pretty adept at Android and iOS development, and then sort of worked my way into becoming a lead and then a manager for mobile. Also, at the time, I knew that I was very interested in expanding to my knowledge and skills in the company as well, to the cloud. So did a lot of work there, and then I still remember, me and a friend at the company, we started DAT's AWS account on like somebody's personal credit card, I think. Not that I was suggesting this was just this is just a part of the culture, I guess, is that you are allowed, just, hey, there's not some big bureaucracy here. You can get going on something, and then eventually need to merge that in with actual IT and all that stuff. But yeah, started our AWS account, got going there, and then from there spent a lot of time in DevOps. Kind of once you've figured out that you can do all this awesome stuff in the cloud, the next step is, or at least a natural step for like an engineering type, is to think about, well, gosh, and I can automate all this. Like, that's awesome. I could just, my whole environment could just come up with a script. So did a lot of that work, and over time, in working on those problems, I was given more as that happens, right? And then ended up where I am today for the last, I've been in my current role for a few years now, as vice president of technology. So yeah, that was the Reader's Digest version, I think, of the career.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it sounds like what I heard from you is C at Clark to mobile at DAT with cloud, and I'm sure many other technologies along the way. So I would call that a polyglot. Is that how you might describe yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me personally, I'm interested in a lot of things. So definitely polyglot is probably a decent way to describe it.
Yeah. What's interesting about your story, Mark, is you've been at DAT for 10 plus years, which is so unheard of in our industry. And I know that there's others that have been there at DAT longer than even yourself. What's it like working for a company for that long, where probably the only constant is change, and especially being kind of an under the radar kind of company? What's it been like for you, besides just going from that senior engineer to the vice president of technology?
Great question. I think what's been really great about, and what's kept me there, is the scope of problems that we keep uncovering and getting to solve and iterating to another, bigger scope and more interesting problems. And then after you've solved those and you get to more and more, a little of the backstory about DAT. So DAT's been around for 43 years. Started at the Jubit's truck stop over there in Jansen Beach. And And what we do, just to give the high level
Sure.
overview, we are we'll call it freight matching. Our core business is in freight matching. More or less, what that means is that we match the trucks and the people that drive them with the loads that need to be moved across the country. So there's a lot of the freight that you see out on the road is moved mainly just because somebody called or somebody had one truckload of stuff that needed to get moved, and so they looked on our service, our freight matching platform, to find somebody who was willing to do it. So at the beginning, that was like green screen monitors and telephones and truck stops, right? And there's actually a pretty good picture of that. I think if you look on our website somewhere to the history, you'll see it's somebody calling and looking up at this green screen, and that's hence the dial-a-truck part of it. So over the course of years, and then expanding into my time at DAT, we've had to evolve that over and over and over again, right? It was green screens and telephones. At some point, it's satellite dishes, and then there's faxes involved and modems or somewhere, then desktop applications, then web applications. And I'm coming in right about the web application era, when we had first overhauled, one of the major projects when I first started was to overhaul our desktop application to become a web-based. And then, okay, can't stop there. Let's go to mobile. And then there's a lot of technology change, obviously, that comes with all this. Let's move to the cloud so we can leverage the kinds of technology there. And now for us, it's like just Groundhog's Day as far as innovation is concerned, right? We need to be, we're looking at how we're going to apply, machine learning and AI and leverage, cloud, all the benefits of the cloud in order to present a whole nother generation experience. And with that, there's sort of this growth in not only the size of the company, because I think when we started, I think it was somewhat of a sleepy company, at least as far as not culture wise, but just, we weren't huge. But now, I mean, there's 14 Scrum teams at DAT. I mean, it's no small scale operation, and we're a pure SaaS company. Not everybody knows. I would say not everybody knows about us, but if you're out there looking for a place that is really innovating in new and fun technologies, and continuing to grow. I mean, we're definitely on the list there for sure. So I hope that kind of gives you a sense of that, and that's what. So to answer your question, that's what keeps somebody like me there for as long as I've been, is that it feels like I've been in, I don't know, 6 different companies over that time because of all the new and fun stuff we've been doing.
Yeah, that's great. What's a day in the life for you now as the vice president of technology? What's that look like?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the COVID world definitely has its own rhythms to it, right? But I would say that they still follow a lot of what it is that, a lot of the ceremonies are just online, right? But usually starting the day with checking in with various people. I have a lot of one-on-ones, so I'm constantly meeting with my leadership team, and then also getting in touch, with what the individual teams are up to. So a lot of FaceTime on Google Meets for sure. But other than that, communicating a lot over Slack, just keeping on top of things. We like to, usually by the end of the day, there's some rhythms that I think are still similar to the office, which is like by the end of the day, it's like the meetings have sort of taken a step back. It's it's 5:30 or whatever it is, and there's a LaCroix in my hand, and I'm just kind of debriefing on the day and whatnot. But yeah, that's generally the rhythms. A lot of talking still, a lot of communicating, which I think is great. It's what kind of keeps me connected, and I think what keeps everybody connected when we're dispersed like this.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk more about DAT. I know that you folks are hiring. I think you've told me in the last 4 years it's been pretty rare when you have not been hiring.
Yeah.
What's your tech stack at DAT, and maybe we could start there.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say we have a few different tech stacks. I mean, being 43 years old, we have a lot of things that were legacy or as we like to call them, legendary tech stacks. that still run large portions of our business. But everything new we do and all the skills that we, 95% of the recs that we're going to be hiring for are going to be in, AWS, Kubernetes, cloud native, whatever you can find. We like JavaScript around here, so we do mostly Node. But I've always, that's an area that I don't think that I've always said, we're not like wed to it. It's a quite convenient environment, just given that so you can do so many different things in it, and it crosses tech stacks, right? Our front ends are mostly in Angular, actually pretty much entirely in Angular. And some of our legendary stuff is .NET and Java and that kind of stack.
Legendary, I like that word. I think I'm going to start using that word actually instead of legacy. Legendary.
These are the things that power the business in a lot of ways. So yeah, give them credit where it's due, man.
Kill the money makers. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So talking about hiring, what do you have as far as openings right now, and what do you see coming up in 2021?
Sure. Yeah. For us, I think you framed it just right. I don't think there's been a moment where I haven't been hiring an engineer, had an engineering rec open, at least in the last 3 or 4 years. So we're hiring mostly in the tech stack, like you said. We have a co-headquarters in Denver as well. So we're hiring 2 locations at once, pretty much, like I said, perpetually. The kinds of problems that you're working on are, I couldn't be more excited about them, frankly. I mean, we are continuing that evolution to improve the way that not only freight is matched, but getting farther into like just improving or removing efficiencies out of and friction points out of the way that all these transactions that are still now very bound by like phone calls and a lot of manual interaction. So a large part of our work is truly trying to innovate and change people's workflows, and by extension really improve their lives, because our two-sided network of truckers and on the other side are either people that need to move things, largely freight brokers, happen to be on the other side of our network. But truckers, their jobs are not easy. They're moving everything, especially nowadays in the world of so much is in the world of remote everything. There's a lot of freight a lot of pressure that's being put on the truckers to adapt. And our tools and the tools that we're building are really designed to make their jobs easier, to make it so that they can find the load they need when they need it at a price that is good for them. And then, that works both ways because we're a two-sided network too. So connecting people is absolutely what we do. And for those, for people that are interested in doing stuff like that, I think that DAT is absolutely the place you should come and check out. Our website is dat.com/careers. And like I said, perpetually hiring especially at least for engineers, for sure, and many other roles, product management and marketing and sales. I mean, we've just check out the page and you'll find all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, seems like you're always hiring in all different departments, as you alluded to. And I was going to ask you how you would get in touch with DAT, but you just answered it, obviously. You talked about the change in technologies over the years. You talked about how you went to AWS on a credit card. So I'm kind of getting a sense of what the culture's like, but I don't want to assume it. So talk to us about that. What's the sizzle? Why would somebody apply for a role at DAT besides, a pretty amazing tech stack and things of that nature? What draws people to DAT?
Yeah, a great question. I think aside from like I said, the sizzle, the tech stack, the problems and all that, which are really great, I think that what draws people to DAT, and what actually it's what drew me to DAT, is the same thing that keeps people at DAT, is the people. DAT is the kind of place that you're going to come, you're going to meet, we're no flash in the pan startup. I mean, we move with urgency, obviously, like every company that's trying to solve problems does, but we're stable. Like we're at the top of this market. Like we're a company where you can be deliberate about the choices that you make, and you don't need to worry about constantly shifting back and forth. And I think what that does is that it at least with the people like myself who've been there 10 years, and there's plenty of people that have been there as long or some much longer than me. It makes you really take a long-term view to what's going on, and in that you're building these. You're solving problems over longer term periods. You're building relationships over these longer term periods, and frankly, you're building a lot of friendships as well. The kind of culture that we have absolutely, I think, lends itself to people that. Well, let me put it this way. One of the primary qualities, especially in engineering, that we look for is you obviously want smart people, eager people for sure, but also humility too. I mean, I'm not interested in staffing up with people that are smart and eager but are willing to tread over other people or not listen to other ideas or whatever. So when you bring that kind of humility too, that's where I think that bonds are formed and people become friends, and you're going out to lunches together as a team, and ultimately you're staying because DAT is a place where you can where you have people that you count on, people that you're friends with, and you're doing interesting work. And yeah, so anyways, that I think is just about all you could want in a company, at least if you're an engineer. So I'm always interested in telling that story because I think DAT is the right place to look if you're looking.
I've heard you say and others hungry, humble, and smart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the attributes that you look for, as you kind of alluded to. So yeah,
Absolutely,
that's great.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sounds like there's tons of sizzle at DAT. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see it every day, and so yeah, spreading the word. Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. I have a question I ask a lot of folks. It's kind of a simple, innocent question, but sometimes it stumps people. What's your why? Like, besides providing for your family and your loved ones, and going to work every day to put a roof over your head and food on the table, what gets you out of bed every day, Mark? What's your why or your core purpose, would you say?
It's a great question. I'd say it kind of comes back to the people, right? I mean, this is, speaking for myself, I don't want to let people down, right? And these are when you've built relationships and you've made friends and you have a company that you believe in their mission and you believe in kind of what we're doing and what we're trying to solve. You combine that with a bunch of people that are depending on you. I mean, me in my role, people are depending on me to come up, to organize the group and to hire the smart people that come up with the solutions to these kinds of big and interesting problems we're trying to solve. So being depended on like that, and I think that happens that happens at all levels, right? It's not just at mine.
Sure.
Is what it's what gets me out of bed in the morning for sure. The rest of it, like there's a lot of other reasons, but I would say that that's the core why. There's others, which is like solving problems and just being interested in evolving a product, or interested in evolving an experience, or solving or helping customers. That's a big thing. But really for me, I think it comes down to like people depend on me, and I'm at a place where I think is making a difference and is has taken care of me, and so for those reasons it's like, well, I'm doing my duty, I'm doing my job.
Amen. That's awesome. You've been incredibly successful in your professional career. You've risen up to where you're currently at. I'd love talking to what I consider are successful people, and I would definitely consider you one of them. What are some of the attributes that you attribute, or what are some of the things you attribute to your success? Where have what kind of maybe mentorship have you received, or can you share with us kind of your mindset and your thoughts for how you've been able to take your career to the level that you're currently at?
Yeah. Yeah, it might, great question. It might surprise you to hear that sometimes it feels like almost a bit of a mystery at times, because when you reflect on these things and you're looking back and you're like, how exactly did all this happen? I'd say, though, a few principles at work throughout. One of them, absolutely, like when you're talking about mentors, and I think mentors come in various forms, right? There are explicit mentors, which I've had, people that have been either my boss or, have actually gone and been, had mentorship like outside of DAT, people that come in and I can talk with and they can help me grow. But also mentors in the sense that just people that you look up to, and for me, people at DAT as well. Like I can think of multiple examples of like people who you just thought, wow, this person is just a rock star. I mean, they're just great. And, you start imitating them and you start to see what their qualities are. So absolutely, that's a big piece. The other one I would say is probably pretty simple. And this is sometimes, I've been asked, like, not frequently, but I would say I've been asked how, what like advice, like, hey, I'd like to kind of move up in the world. Maybe I want to be like move up to being a manager or director, like whatever, up the ranks. And I say, for me, the one thing I think I did pretty effectively, and that I love having people around me that continue to do, is just solve problems that no one else is solving. I mean, there are so many people, like when you're up and you're looking you're in a management role or a leadership role, you're in your darker moments, you're just beset by all these problems that that you're trying to work through. And, many of them people related, or they're technical, or they're scaling, or, there's all these things. And the people that come in your mind and that they shine in those moments are the people like, oh, I can give that person a problem. Or they, even better, you don't have to give it to them. They walk by it. They sort of stroll by a problem and go like, oh gosh, that's sort of a mess. Like this system seems to be tipping over like every other day. Let me just check that code base out. Let me just see what's going on. And then before you know it, like I can think of, multiple examples of people that I'll get an email and it'll be like, here's all what, there'll be some production incident. And then the next day I'll get an email from somebody like, you can tell that they stayed up late doing this. And it was, here's what happened. Here's what I think's going on. I went and I'm going to change this and I'm going to do that. And I just think like, that is just like gold. And I think that those kinds of people, they stand out in a way that is not always what you might think from the outside. Like I know for myself is like, oh, the person that sounds really eloquent and talks a lot when they're in front of their boss or their boss's boss, like they're the ones that sort of get the attention and rise up. And for me, and because I never really considered myself to be that type, but I did consider myself to be the kind of person that bothered by problems like that and just willing to go take them on, solve them, without fanfare, because back to kind of my why is like, I just care about this. It's kind of like my house and I've got a leak in the roof. And so let me just, figure this thing out. So I'd say that contributed pretty significantly. And just, another plug for DAT, I would say, is that there's still, you solve problems, you get more of them, right? I mean, and good ones that you like, ones that, scalability, or how are we going to do this even better? Or, how do we made this improvement, but yet now, there's some after effects and all that. So I know a lot about the people that in DAT that do that habitually. I mean, I know them, and they might not even know that I know a lot about them and that I hold them in the esteem. Maybe I should be telling them. But yeah. So anyway, so I those kind of, I would say, my top two: the mentors, and then like just don't walk by problems. Don't just appreciate the problem, as they say. Don't be in the meeting and try and be the one that's going to give you the smartest take on it, which is, I mean, that's good. They're not like you shouldn't do that, but that's not really. Get in there, dig in there, and see what you can do and solve it and surprise somebody with the solution.
Take ownership.
Yeah, take ownership of it. treat it like it's your, treat your company like it's yours, like you care about it. And that really shines through.
That's a good segue to what kind of advice you would give, Mark, to budding software engineers. Let's go back, 15 years or so. You were that person going to Clark College, taking the C course and all that. Not really sure what you wanted to do, but you knew that there was money in software engineering effectively. What kind of advice would you give to folks that want to get into technology, programming? What would you say to them if they come to you and said, how do I get into DAT eventually over time? What are some of the tips and tricks that you would tell them?
Sure. I think the first thing, because I've talked with a few people in this capacity, the first thing I would say is like, it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed in the world of technology and software, because I think the problem just keeps getting worse, because like when I started, it was, well, you had like .NET or Java, pick one. Yeah. And then maybe web and database, like, you just have these pretty well-defined things. Now, like the spectrum of what you could know and what you can do is huge. So what I suggest to people is pick something and go deep on it first, because especially for certain types of people, I almost actually can consider myself one of these types of people, that you can be like, okay, intro programming, here I go. Open up a shell. What's a shell? What is this language? Like how do I script how do I script this thing? How do I learn this whole thing end to end? And my suggestion is like, try and just leave that alone to start with, and pick something that you can go deep on. And for a lot of people, that usually means, that typically means either like a great front end stack, like you just get to know React or Angular or something, and you get to know like kind of HTML, CSS, JavaScript pretty dang well. That's a great starting place. Or others, it's like, a lot of times they come at it from another angle, which is like, I was great at database and queries, and then I got into like, building models and testing them and all that. But going deep first, and then I say, if you really want to keep, and then as you want to move up in your career, then I think you start to broaden out. Then you start to learn, okay, well, how do I script this stuff? How does this shell work? Because it's like, it seems to be critical in just about every other step I take to build a project, but yet I don't know much about it. And then, move up the stack, move into the server side, and like, okay, how does let me learn a little bit about Kubernetes, or let me learn about Node.js, if that's, if you're kind of moving your way up the stack. But along the way, I think that's how you get, that's a great way to get your start, is by going deep first. And then once you're planted, you can kind of start growing out. And I would suggest doing that. I mean, if unless you're just in love with a certain part of the stack, which is awesome, I think that's great too.
How do you know where to start though?
Yeah, well, that's a question I might not have a great answer to. As you can probably tell by my history, I just sort of was opportunistic. Hey, here's a job you can make money at. And I mean, I think that some people feel called to certain things, others don't. I think a lot of people with that visual aspect of the front end, it's so immediate, and the cycles can be so fast. It's like, make a change and it's instantly reloaded, and you're looking at that, versus there's some things that are harder to have those cycles. But I would say that, well, one, just like what do you gravitate to more naturally? The other I would say is like, well, how closely do you want to work with like designers and like on that very front glass of customer experience, because you'll need to know more about like just frankly human psychology at some level. Like, you'll have to understand like, okay, this button here, that button goes there, and here's why that clicking might not be good. Versus in the back end, your problems end up being, you still are ultimately very connected to the customer problem, but your problems are going to be more about, just more technical in nature. How am I going to scale this? What's the proper way to design this? both. That's a little bit overly simplistic because I think that there's parts that bleed into either side. Like ultimately, if you're doing a backend, then you really do need to understand a lot about what the customer problem you're trying to solve is, but not quite as much as you do when you're all the way up front doing those kind of technologies. But if all that fails, just get started and get started, go deep for a while, see if you like it, and then pivot, because you're likely to end up needing to pivot one way or the other. So yeah.
Sometimes the hardest part about getting started is just getting started, right? And I think you mentioned maybe it's oversimplistic, but I think that's a good thing because, as you said, technology is so complex right now. How many services are within AWS? I mean, just count the ways. It's crazy. And where do you start from that perspective if you want to go deep in the cloud? So I think just doing that and taking a more simplistic approach and finding out what it is, like you said, you love and you might gravitate towards.
Yeah, and I'll dovetail just a little bit off of that, because I think keeping it simple is also is a tenet that is great to be keeping in mind while you're moving through your career, because it's technology software is by its nature very complicated, and what we all need, and the people that I think that end up being very successful are not the ones that created the most complicated solution that solves the very complicated problem. It's a person that looked at the complicated problem, thought about it in a simple way, probably shed like a bunch of edge cases off and just said, I'm going to come up with a solution that, yeah, I'm sorry, it only hits 98%, but it is also 98% smaller in footprint and complexity than this other thing that needed to get to 100% of all the edge cases that you wanted. That's a skill set that is extremely valuable too. And so when you apply that to like a new fresh start, is like, don't think that just because, and this is advice for kind of people getting started, I would say, don't think that just because you opened the repo and you're new, it's like your first day, and oh my gosh, this is like so complicated. I made that mistake multiple times in my career, thinking that, all that complexity is necessary. Not really. Like, if you think of a simple way to do it, do that. Do the simplest way you can, and then watch it possibly fail. It's okay. Just do it the simple way. You spent a little bit of time on it. You did it the simple way. It failed, but the way you need to fix it is probably also something that's simple, because your problem was simple, versus if you start with something very complex, well, you end up having to apply very complex solutions in order to keep moving them, and you end up kind of riding this curve of complexity that, yeah, it doesn't end well. Let's put it that way.
Iterate.
Yeah. Iterate. Simple. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with trying to hit every single edge case, like you said, that's the perfection. What's the term in software I've heard? Perfection is the enemy of done.
Well, the perfect is the enemy of the good is one out there. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, for sure. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite project coming up at DAT? You talked about machine learning and AI and things like that. What's if you can talk about anything that is coming up that is kind of highly on your radar that you're really looking forward to?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I might not go into like too much detail, but I'll give the broad strokes because a lot of it's already out there. The starts of it are already out there in the marketplace. There's a DAT kind of there's two large branches, I would say. We do this thing, freight matching, like I talked about, and we are the premier freight matching network in the country. We have millions of loads that are moved on our load board every year, and so what the projects that we are looking at are right along the lines of what we've started to do, and will continue to evolve over the course of the next years, which is we are looking to continually evolve that experience of freight matching, and make it better, make it so that everything isn't so manual. Like you don't having to like pick up phones. Now you can be interacting and exchanging information and essentially doing a lot of the transaction that's involved. Once you found the person on the other side, you can perform much of it in the DOT ecosystem, in the DOT platform. So that's our Book Now product. Frankly, it's moving so that you've got a link, and you can not just pick up a phone and call that person. You can click a button and actually move through that transaction with them. The other side is that we're continually producing products that leverage the DAT database, the DAT. The amount of data that we have access to, given our position as the industry leader in this space, to be able to tell people a lot more about how to effectively run their business. In particular, what are the going rates like out? What's the market conditions like out in the country, as far as, are prices going up? Are they going down? What's a good rate to get this truck at, or what's a good rate to move this load at? That we're continuing. This year we produced, or sorry, in 2020 we produced a rate forecasting product that uses AI and machine learning in order to forecast where rates are going, which is just amazing. I mean, the accuracy of that thing is just, it's even surprised us how accurate it's been. So that's another track that interesting problems that we're working on solving at DAT is getting better and getting more actionable, more real and insightful information out to our customers. And what's great, one last thing about both of them is, it's really awesome to be at a company where you don't sort of have to like raise your hand and be like, hey, over here, you should check out this. Like I'm a new entrant, but like, you're trying to get a megaphone out and stand on, grandstand and try to get some attention. We've been around for so long, and we have such a dedicated customer base that loves what we do, frankly, that it's always really awesome, especially as an engineer to watch people excited about what you're producing and to watch it just land and get traction right away. It's like eager audience that's just waiting for you to win, frankly. And so yeah, those are some of the cool things that we're working on in the coming future.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, well, it sounds like you've got a lot of long-term clients, and they clearly respect and trust you. So
yeah. I mean, that we're still known. We're known of all kinds of things out there in truckers and carriers and in brokers, like the DAT and DAT and DAT and we're sort of, once you get into that industry, it's we're a household name. Let's put it that way.
Maybe shifting gears just a little as we kind of wrap up here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you wouldn't mind. Like, what do you do on Saturdays and Sundays when you're not leading 14 Scrum teams?
Right. Well, let's see. So, I've got a family of 6. I got 4 kids. So a lot of time being spent there. Love snowboarding. So I born and raised, for the most part in Southwest Washington. Mount Hood has always been my home. And so I actually, a few years ago, got a truck camper. And so we pile the kids in, we go up, and this is not a huge camper, by the way, to put 6 people in. Actually, over the break, we just tested having all 6 of us stay the night in the Timberline parking lot. So anyways, if that's your idea of fun, that's our idea of fun anyways. So getting out, doing that, that's got to be number one for me. Also, just anything Northwest. I mean, like I said, I've loved growing up here. I love staying here. The coast is awesome. Surfing's really fun. Hiking. I mean, it's no better place to be than the Northwest. And I've heard the same things about Denver too. So don't let me. But I'm biased towards having grown up here. So both places have so much to offer for anybody that's like looking to relocate. You're looking to relocate. You want a great job, man. You love skiing, you love snowboarding, you love hiking, you love the mountains. I mean, we're in the 2 top places in the U.S. to experience that kind of stuff. So,
as a native Oregonian, I can say for sure I agree with you 100%. Where else can you be where else in the world can you be 2 hours from a beach and 2 hours from world-class skiing and snowboarding.
Mhm.
Sure, there's some out there, but we have it for sure in Portland.
Yeah.
Where do you go to Meadows or do you go to Timberline?
Yeah, you know what? You kind of, when you grow up somewhere, you get an affection. I have an affection for Timberline. That I mean, I started my very first day snowboarding there, and ever since, it's just, I love the lodge. I love the feel of the place. Meadows is a lot more professional, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
in the sense that it's got the steep runs and all the stuff.
yeah.
But Timberline and Mount Hood in general, I grew up going snowboarding there when in the area that snowboarding was still kind of becoming a thing, so to speak. And so I was going to the first snowboard parks, and I just still remember them being built up with like bulldozers out there. It's just,
Yeah.
it was, yeah. But yeah, Timberline's the home for me.
I love the lodge up there. It's a place that if you come to Oregon, you need to go to the Timberline Lodge. Just
Absolutely. Go there.
ideally, I
Yeah.
mean, but you can go any time of the year, but I think the winter is the best time to go, although more busier,
Yeah. Go there, have a drink by those huge fireplaces. I mean, yeah, stay in the room. Yeah, it's beautiful up there for sure.
You have a favorite beach town? Cannon,
Yeah,
Manzanita?
my in-laws are actually there's a house that they've got out kind of near, sort of in between so around the Manzanita area, Manzanita Rockaway kind of area. So spend a lot of time, and kind of depends on the feel. Like I like the feel of both places. Like Manzanita kind of has that Cannon Beach up and coming sort of vibe, and you're going to get your nice coffee there. Versus Rockaway is much more of like the kind of beach that I grew up going to. I would go to Long Beach quite a bit, but here's your cotton candy, your ice cream, your big, huge, massive beach and playgrounds and stuff like that.
Pirate Festival in Rockaway, I believe they have a yearly festival. Yes. Definitely a different kind of feel than Manzanita. Manzanita is really nice, really cute. Nehalem, I think Nehalem's really interesting. It's very, very tiny. They have a really good, kind of a really chic restaurant there in Nehalem. As you're kind of going up the hill, going north on 101, kind of
Wanda's, right?
What's it called?
Wanda's.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Wanda's is great. And there's some just great areas over there on the coast. It sounds like you're very much into the outdoors and just doing things out in nature. So yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Get up there 2 or 3 times a year. More than that.
Oh, up to the mountains. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm always optimistic. I buy the season passes at the beginning of the year, and then, I like to at least have them all paid for. But I'm teaching my daughters how to snowboard, and so yeah, I like to go at least, let's say, once or twice a month. It's it's funny because when I got started snowboarding, I thought, no, this is always going to be my thing, and I'm just going to be going up and doing it on my own. Way to get away. But then, gosh, it's so much fun to teach kids too. Well, it's fun and it's work, but so I try and take my girls up and get them into it. They love it, which is it's amazing to watch the resilience of kids, because Mount Hood, the weather can be something else. I mean, like you really don't know what you're getting into up there, and it'll be like snowing sideways, faces like half frozen, and my girls they're ready for another run, and I'm like, I am cold and tired. Can we go in there? We're going again. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. Kids don't feel it sometimes, like us adults,
No, they're having, when they're having fun doing something, it's like all the sensory kind of stuff, sort of being cold sort of takes a back seat.
That's all they're thinking about. Yeah, absolutely. Mark, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing more about your story and DAT's story. And, going back to DAT, I know you're hiring a lot. There's a lot of sizzle, a lot of great opportunity, it sounds like, and some newer technology that you folks are incorporating as you just continue on with the next evolution of your product. And it sounds like a great company to be working for. as evidenced by your 10 plus years there.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate you having me. Definitely agree with you about, about checking out DAT. So for everybody listening, please do that. But I also want to say, thanks to IT Motives. You guys have always been a great partner with us and navigating the recruiting landscape in the area. So thank you very much for that as well.
You're too kind, my friend. You're too kind. You're very much welcome, and it's definitely appreciated on our end as well. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.